Hello everybody, welcome to week one of Intro to American Government. My name is Eric Hodges and I'm going to be your instructor for this course. So the first thing I wanted to ask you to do was to pause the video right now and watch the video clip that I posted on the newsroom. So that's a pretty inflammatory video in a lot of ways, and I think it really cuts to the heart of the way a lot of people feel about U.S. government these days. You know, it's disappointing. People are disengaged from the government. It's really interesting. In the video, you see the person on the left, and then the person on the right, and then there's this, fighting that goes on, and it seems like a lot of the issues are getting lost along the way. So, I think that's a pretty interesting, synopsis of where we are as a culture politically right now. Okay, so I just wanted to sort of show you that to, maybe whet your appetite a little bit. But anyway, I want to introduce myself. My name is Eric Hodges. I just finished my PhD from Virginia Tech in Government and International Affairs. I'm from Virginia originally, and out of high school I joined the Marine Corps. So I have some experience in the government and the military. Got out of the Marine Corps, went back, did my undergrad at UVA in government. After I graduated, I moved to DC for 4 years where I worked for the CIA. So continuing government theme there. I got tired of that, and I got tired of the DC area, and I decided that I wanted to maybe do something a little more productive with my life. So went back to graduate school at Virginia Tech, got my PhD, and got the job here. So here I am. So that's me, and because we're doing this class online, I think it's really important that we get to know each other, because one of the big benefits of taking a class is not just the interaction between you and I, but it's the interaction between all of the students. And one of the things that happens in an online class pretty often is that the interaction from student to student gets lost. So for your first assignment, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I want you to post an introductory video of yourself. I know everybody may not have access to a webcam or video cam. If you don't, that's okay. It's definitely preferable for you to film a video. And what I'm doing in this instance here is I'm just going to film this video on my computer, and then I'm going to upload it to YouTube. And then I'm going to put it'll be in one of our discussions. I'm going to put a place where you can upload your video. Now, if you can't do a video, that's okay. You can just put in some text. This is who I am. This is why I'm interested in this particular course, and a photo, so people can sort of put a name with the face. Okay, so that's me. I guess we should talk about the course a little bit. So first, why study American government? Maybe it's a requirement for you guys. In a lot of universities, it is a core requirement. But I hope that you have some particular interest in this field of study, because political science or government is a topic that not only is theoretical, but also it's very practical. It affects our lives on a daily basis. One of the readings that I posted for this week, I didn't put it on the syllabus, so it's optional for you guys, but it's just the first 3 chapters. It's, I think, 3 pages from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. And Aristotle talks about why political science is, he calls it the master art. And it's sort of a long, drawn-out argument, but essentially what he says is that every pursuit, every art has a purpose that it's aiming towards. And there's a hierarchy of purposes. So he uses the example of medicine, for instance. So let's say pediatrics. The purpose of studying pediatrics or doing pediatrics is to help kids be healthy. But pediatrics is also falls under the category of more general internal medicine or something like that. So you can see that pediatrics, cardiology, all of these things would fall under medicine as sort of a larger thing. And maybe something like medicine falls under wellness or something like that. And it goes sort of all the way up. And Aristotle makes the argument that political science is the highest in the hierarchy, because basically who controls the power in the society determines what the other pursuits or what the other sciences are going to be that are going to be studied in that particular society. So because Aristotle says that political science is the highest in the hierarchy, the end of political science must be the greatest end or the greatest purpose of all. And Aristotle defines that as the end of political science is promoting what is good for man, mankind, not men, although Aristotle was a little bit of a chauvinist, but we can talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, so Aristotle says that political science is the master art, and it determines what else is studied. And if you look, throughout universities, a lot of stuff comes from government funding. So in a very real way, it does control the other activities that are done. So it's pretty important to understand. Not only that, I mean, sometimes we think of politics sort of in an abstract way, but it affects us on a daily basis, and that's one of the things that I really want to focus on in this particular course is how these things that we're going to be studying about U.S. government and about politics affects us on a daily basis. And that's another thing I'd like to make a distinction between politics and government, because there's a difference between the two. Politics is the acquisition and legitimate use of force or power. Government is sort of an institutional response mechanism by a society to make sure that the society is well ordered and that things are running properly, as Aristotle would say, to pursue the greatest good for man or society. Now, often what we see is that government and the machinations of government work through politics, because people are using force to acquire the power to be elected representatives, to influence those representatives. So politics, of course, goes hand in hand with government and putting these particular mechanisms in place, and people try to put into place mechanisms that benefit them individually. It's no shocker there. But anyway, it's important before we move forward to make sure that we understand the distinction between politics and government, because there is a distinction there. Okay, so yeah, I was talking about how government is real. As a matter of fact, tomorrow is the primary election for the state of Florida, so I would encourage you guys to vote, to educate yourselves a little bit if you haven't already on the particular candidates who are going to be voted for tomorrow. Essentially, in a primary elections, when a party or whatever selects their particular candidate for the general election that's coming up, but there also are state representatives, there are local, community, and county people who will be voted on, and this stuff it definitely affects you. It affects you in a very real way, especially in your communities. We live in a federal government, so then one of the things that often gets lost is that the things that happen at a local level. So the federal government's what we hear about a lot in the news, but the local stuff is really important, if not more important, in my opinion. So anyway, something to consider. We've heard over the past couple of weeks about what's been going on in Ferguson. Some serious political ramifications and governmental ramifications in that particular case, especially thinking about the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the right of the people to peacefully assemble. Of course, there's a debate there on how peaceful the assembly was. There are several other amendments. The Fourth Amendment talking about illegal search and seizure. The Fifth Amendment, use of excessive force and due process. So there are several amendments that we're going to look at a little bit later on in the course when we're looking at the Constitution that come to bear directly with this notion of what is the legitimate use of force by the police in this particular case. And then we also have the question of state. Usually the states are in charge of the police force because the Constitution does not specifically state that the federal government has the right to police the states. So it's left to the purview of the states to do that. However, in things like the 14th Amendment and stuff like that, the federal government suppressed some of the rights of the states to actually, police their things, especially if it's an illegitimate use of force. So a lot of things to talk about there. Um, yeah, so it's very real, and it's going to be interesting as we go through the course. I'm going to try to bring in as many real-time events as I can, and I encourage you guys in the discussions to bring in those things as well. I included on the syllabus my Twitter. I'm going to be tweeting probably on a daily basis about any sort of political events that I see that might be of interest. My Twitter handle is at @ProfessHodges, and you can find that on the syllabus. But I'll try to keep us updated as to what's going on and how I think the events that are happening in real time relate to some of the discussions that we're having right now. Okay, so let's go through the syllabus a little bit here. Course description, you guys can read that. I talked about politics a little bit. It says at the end of the first paragraph, an emphasis will be placed on the historical development. We're going to look at how things unfolded over time, and how things that are happening currently are adhering to the values that were actually put in place at the beginning. Course is divided into 4 sections. Part 1 and 2 sort of focus on the founding of the founding of the American Constitution, the founding of the U.S. government, the Federalist Papers, some of the ideals that sort of guided that particular process, and the context, which was very important as well. Part 3 of the course is going to focus on sort of the electorate, the citizens, and sort of how they interact with the federal government institutions and special interest groups and the importance that they play, and social movements as well. Part 4 is going to talk about the political institutions. We think of the 3 that you think about when you think about American political institutions. The first, probably the presidency, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. But there's also a 4th one that doesn't get as much discussion. We're going to look at that some in this course. Is the bureaucracy, which is essentially the government organizations that make up the government. So which is a huge part of the government right now. Course topics. I've got on here the first thing: how government impacts your life, because I think that it's something that's really important. And we live in a society now, as you saw from that video clip, that's very fragmented. I mean, one of the great things about the United States and the United States government is that you're free to believe, as long as you're not harming somebody else, you're free to believe and carry out whatever beliefs that you think are right. But this leads to a conundrum, because the problem is, we lose a sense of community and perhaps a sense of community identity because we're all across the board. We have all these different beliefs, different belief systems, different practices, different cultures, things like that. So the question becomes, what is it that unites us, as a nation, as a country? And my argument is the thing that unites us is our government and our way of life, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, which enshrines our personal liberties. These are the things that unite us. And unfortunately, people are becoming more and more jaded when it comes to these things because they see these politicians, and it's obvious that they're out for their own personal gain. You got Republican versus Democrat, and it doesn't seem like all these values that are enshrined in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are really, people are living up to them. So people have lost that sense of identity and that sense of pride in many ways in our Constitution and in our government. So one of the things that I hope that we can do is try to recapture a little bit of that sort of shared identity that we have as Americans through the really amazing government, the amazing foundation for a government that was put into place with the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and things that, pretty incredible at the time, and it seems like we've perhaps gotten off track somewhere along the way. So let's see. Format's important for this particular course because it's an online course. As I said, I think that the interactions that happen between everybody in the class, not just myself and you, but the other students, are very important. And if it's not done properly, it's very easy to lose that in an online course. So, you'll find out that I've placed a pretty big premium on participation in this course. 25% of your final grade will be participation. So if you're not participating, you're not engaged in the weekly discussions, which most of your assignments are going to be discussion questions that I'm going to post, then you're not going to do well in the course. I mean, you could, make 100 on everything else, and if you don't participate, you're not going to, you get a 75, I guess. And but of course, if you don't participate, you're not going to do well on those assignments also. So here's the way that it will work. On Monday, like today, I will post a video of myself sort of introducing the topics. Mostly I'll introduce the topics for this coming week, and I will discuss in depth what we looked at last week, because obviously I don't want to discuss everything in depth before you actually read it, because then you may think, well, I don't need to read it. But I want you to read it. I want you to come to your own conclusions. And then in the discussions, I'll chime in and say, hey, that's a great, you make a great point. Have you thought about this? And then the next week, I will, sort of recap what happened the previous week. So Monday, I'll post the video introducing the topics for the week, introducing the assignments for that week. Wednesday, I'm going to post your assignment, which in most cases will be a discussion question. And the way that I have done it is I've broken you up into different discussion groups, because it gets a little unwieldy if we have 25 or 30 people trying to participate in one discussion. So I've broken you up into mostly in groups of 4 or 5 people. You can find that on the Canvas site. If you go under Files, there should be a folder that says Group Assignments. So go in there and you'll find what your assignment is going to be for the first 2 parts of the course. And when it comes time to do that assignment, I'll say, okay, this is I haven't created the discussion forums yet, but I will create them, because you actually won't be doing your group discussions until next week. And when you post your intros, don't do that just in your groups. Do that for everybody. And that's another thing about that assignment, is that not only do I want you to do it, I want you to actually watch other people's introductions so we can get to know each other a little better. So I ask that you all do that. So I post the assignment on Wednesday, and then the assignment will be due on Saturday night by midnight. The reason I'm putting it Saturday night by midnight is I know some people may be working throughout the week, and they want to do the work on the weekend. So I'm going to give you at least one day on Saturday to do that. But so here's sort of my grading rubric for participation. I'm going to post the discussion question. And of course I want you to respond to the question that I post. But it's not enough to just respond to that particular question. I also want you guys to respond at least to one other person and the point that they're trying to make. So if you want to get 100 for a participation grade for one particular assignment or one particular week, do the readings, respond in a thoughtful way. I want to, I should be able to discern that you've read the particular week's readings, and then do a thoughtful response to one other person. If you do that, then you'll get 100. Obviously, if you don't participate at all, it would be a 0. And then there are gradations in there. If I can tell that you did respond, but you didn't respond to somebody else, your grade won't be as high. If you respond, but it's obvious that you're BSing and you haven't read the material, then your grade won't be 100 either. So that's the way that the participation works, as I've included on the syllabus here. If you have a legitimate reason for not participating, please let me know as far in advance as possible, so we can try to make that up and get you that participation grade. So I'm willing to work with you on it, but just make sure you have a legitimate reason for doing it. No textbooks for the class. I'm going to post all the readings online. So obviously, you could do an online class without a computer, but a computer is required. There is plagiarism software. I may use that from time to time on papers. The grading scale breaks down like this. As I mentioned, participation is 25%. I'm going to post your participation grades at the end of, I think, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4, so you guys can sort of keep up with it and see how things are going. And if you have questions about it, as you go along, let me know. But essentially, I just want to make sure that you guys are reading and that you're engaged in the material. And if I see that you're doing that, then you'll be in good shape. There are going to be 4 quizzes throughout the semester. The first quiz will actually be on the syllabus because I don't want people, it happens invariably, I'll get a bunch of emails about stuff that's on the syllabus. So I want to make sure that you're reading the syllabus. And then the other 3 quizzes will be on course material. There'll be a midterm exam, which will be true and false questions, multiple choice, some short answer, and probably some short essay questions. Short essay means 1 to 2 paragraphs, maybe 2 to 3 paragraphs, something like, probably 2 to 3, 1 to 2 is probably a little short. And then there is a 6 to 8 page final paper, double spaced. I'm going to provide topic suggestions for you guys somewhere along the way, but if there, as we're going along, if there's a topic that you're really interested in, shoot me an email, and we can try to work out a particular topic, a good question, readings, stuff like that. So I'm happy to do that. Also, I'm happy to read drafts if you guys can get them to me, a week or so before the actual deadline. So let's see, what else? Contacting me. I do have office hours. I know that you guys may be spread out. I have office hours at the Sarasota Manatee campus from 1 to 4 on Wednesday afternoon, so you're welcome to come in at any time during that. We can set up a Skype conversation if that works better for you, or we can try to do stuff by email, or if you want to set up an appointment that falls outside of that Wednesday from 1 to 4 time, that's fine as well. Disabilities. If anybody has a disability and they have a legitimate reason for that, I think you have to go through disability services to get some sort of paperwork to do that. But if you do have that problem, or something that's impeding you, let me know and we can work with that. Fire alarm, I don't think you're going to have to worry about that. Probably should have taken that off the syllabus. Web portal information. The one thing that I wanted to point out with Canvas, this is my first semester using Canvas, but I had heard that it's possible to set up when you receive alerts. I ask that you set up, to receive alerts from anything that I send you, assignments, announcements, emails. Set it up to where you get that, immediately, because I may need to get something to you immediately. So please do that. I have something on here called Website Etiquette because it's an all online course. I just want to make sure that we're all being respectful of each other, and I'm sure we will. So no trolling, anything like that. The last thing I have on here is veterans accommodations, or if you're in the military and you get called up to duty or something like that, that's fine. Just I was in the military, I understand. So let me know. And I think essentially that's it for the syllabus. I don't want to go through everything that we're going to do, week by week. You guys can take a look at that, and I'm going to be explaining that in the videos as well. I will talk a little bit about the particular readings and section material for this upcoming week. So this particular week kind of follows on the theme that I talked about in the beginning regarding Americans and our relationship to politics. The average American, not what you see on Fox News or CNN or PBS or whatever, but actual Americans, and how we relate. The first article is by a guy named E.J. Dionne, and he wrote a book, Why Americans Hate Politics. And then the article that I posted is essentially his summation of that a few years after that was published, sort of restating it. And essentially he talks about this idea of these sort of false dichotomies that we create, left versus right, liberal versus conservative, Republican versus Democrat, and how people have become essentially disillusioned with these particular, divisions that we set up. Because oftentimes the problems that we face in politics and in our society probably require, points from both sides. There are points to be made from both sides, and it's hard to say that one way, there's only one possible way to think about these particular issues when it's, when 300 million Americans, we probably have pretty nuanced views on these particular issues. So trying to break down those ideologies and those stereotypes a little bit to really critically think about these particular issues. So it's interesting. It's a dated article. As I was rereading it, He's talking about the Clinton era. He talks about Bush a little bit, but it was written in 2000. And man, some of the things he was saying, I was thinking, wow, he sort of makes it out like there was this golden age, but since 2000, things have probably gotten a lot worse because you think about some of the big events that have happened since he wrote that. You think about 9/11, you think about Iraq and Afghanistan, you think about Katrina, you think about the recession, you think about the shootings and the violence that have been taking, school shootings and violence and all this stuff that's been taking place. And it seems like if we had made the progress that he cites in his particular article, it seems like we might have gone back on a lot of that. And I think that's something we should consider through this course is, how did we get off the rails and what can we do to get back on track with that. So that was the first one. The second one is an Atlantic Monthly article. It's by a guy named Halstead, and he's talking about Generation X, and this is another article that came out around 2000. So that was sort of when Generation X was really coming into their political influence and their apathy, essentially, towards the political process, because once again they don't see the elected representatives going out and trying to really solve the problems that they see that they're being faced. And frankly, they think a lot of their problems, they're sort of disengaged because they feel like the baby boomers who were in charge of the government at the time didn't pay too much heed to the issues that were facing that current generation. So, and Halstead makes the argument, of course, that, and this is right, in a representative government, if you want your issues to be met, somebody from that generation has to step up to the table and take political action, or otherwise your needs and your problems won't be solved or won't be met. So that one's also a little bit dated. I also included, just glance through it, there was a Pew report that recently came out about the following generation, the millennial generation, and how they're also very disengaged from the political process. You don't have to read it's a pretty long report. Maybe just glance through the intro, and then there's one section talking about the millennials and their political affiliation and how they relate to government and stuff like that. And really interesting, really disturbing in some ways. I mean, the University of Michigan has been conducting a study every year for 40 or 50 years. And essentially they ask one question, and the question is, in general, do you think people can be trusted? And I think when they first did it, in the 60s or something like that, 65% of the people said that they thought people could be trusted. With this most recent one in the millennial generation, I believe it was 2012, 19% of this current generation said that people in general can be trusted. So that's a precipitous decline. And when we're trying to live in a democratic society where we're supposed to collaborate, to get things done, when only 19% of the population believe that people in general can be trusted, we've got some serious problems and serious obstacles. So we've got a lot of work to do. So hopefully we can take a step forward with that in this class. For this week, your assignments are to do the introductions. I've started a discussion post for that. That's where you will go to actually post your videos or post your photos and your text. And then there's also a quiz that's due by Saturday night at midnight, and that quiz will be on the syllabus. So I'll send out some reminders on that so I'll actually post the assignment on Wednesday. So you guys should know what to do. And if you have any questions or any concerns, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm looking forward to the semester. This is a very interesting and very timely topic. So looking forward to working with you.